Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven. Today our special guest is Ewan Morrison, and he is an award-winning Scottish novelist, screenwriter, and essayist, praised as the most fluent and intelligent of Scottish writers of his generation by Booker Judge Stuart Kelly. His books include How to Survive Everything, Nina X, and Close Your Eyes. He also won the Not the Booker Prize for Tales from the Mall, named one of the top 50 Scottish books of the last 50 years by the Scottish Book Trust. Morrison blogs regularly for Psychology Today and writes regular articles and essays for AREO Magazine on utopianism, technology, and free speech. So welcome, Ewan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, can you take us back to the beginning a little bit? Like, when did you become a writer? And what drew you to storytelling?
Well, I always believe in not, there's that thing with the Taoist faith, yeah, that you never set a goal and never achieve the goal. You must always get there by a meandering path, otherwise you will go astray. So I started out in art school. I was one of those young British artist types, graduated in the 1990s, and like Damien Hirst and all those people. I was doing postmodern conceptual art. And gradually I got drawn into writing criticism, and then into making short films. And then from short films, these were short narrative films, I got a writing gig over in New York to make a feature film. And then that collapsed. I ended up finding that all I had to show for maybe a decade's work of working in different media was a bunch of notepads that I had been carrying around for years. And looking through them, I realized, holy smoke, there's about 10 short stories in here. And I typed them up and I fiddled around with them. And sure enough, that was my first book of short stories. So I never set out to be a short story writer or a novelist. I've always been just most interested in exploring big ideas in any way that I can. And for me, those big ideas tend to be about the changing nature of society and the big question of, the meaninglessness crisis, the meaning crisis that we're in, have been in the last 20, 30 years. So very often my characters are people who are struggling to find meaning in a world that seems to have lost meaning for them. So I'm on book number 9 now, which has just been published, which is For Emma. And it's a story about a father who's seeking revenge against an AI big tech biotech company that implanted his daughter with a brain chip and killed her. And he's been hearing her voice in his head since that happened, and she's helping him to plan a suicide bombing against the CEO of the corporation. So this goes back 3 or 4 books now, this whole question of broken families and desperate ways to try to find meaning. So How to Survive Everything, the book before this, was about a bunch of survivalists, or preppers, as you would call them. I think preppers are the more left-leaning of the survivalist bunch. It's about a father who's a prepper, and he kidnaps his daughter and her little brother because he believes the end of the world's happening, but he forgets to let their mother, the divorced mother, in on what's going on as well. So she ends up becoming a real blockage in his plans to save the children. So it's that one's quite comical. I like to play around with dark funny, as we would call it, pretty much like the Coen brothers do. You'll remember the dark funny in Fargo, yeah, with Marge, son of a Gunderson, and all those gruesome and accidental deaths. I tend to like to play around with that edge of darkness and pathos, And before that, working backwards, was a book called Nina X, which was about a girl who'd grown up in a cult and had to experience capitalism for the first time when she was released. And the whole question was whether or not she'd managed to survive in the modern world, or whether she would end up going through the social care system and actually being committed and interned again, because she would have trouble, developing all the necessary bits and pieces that you have to be a functioning modern female in capitalism. So Nina X, the name X just being the name on her form, because on her medical form, because she's not got a surname because of the cult she was raised in. We're against things like surnames. So again, it's a broken family story and a quest for meaning, and I mean, that's just really what I do again and again. You know, they always say that you write the same book again and again. I tend not to do it in terms of a series. I don't have the same characters repeating again and again, but I seem to be grappling with
Or
the
like
same.
single books about different broken families.
Yeah, and coming at things from different angles, and always trying to patch up families and look for a sense of, I guess, love or commitment or negotiation. They can try to patch things back together again.
Now, what is your source of inspiration? I hope it's not really a broken family, personally, but like, yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, it comes from the history of fiction itself. I had some big key moments in life. So in my 20s, I was reading Milan Kundera, the Czech dissident writer, the author of The Unbearable Lightness of Being, things like that. And he really taught me that you can have a playful philosophical novel that experiments with form in a really challenging way. And then I kind of went back from that to explore, who were his sources and who could I empathize with. And I find a big alliance there with Dostoevsky, the 19th century Russian writer. And again, Dostoevsky grapples with these huge, big questions of meaning and purpose. And the problem of nihilism. People talk about Friedrich Nietzsche and nihilism and the death of God. Well, Dostoevsky was there first, and he was asking questions like, I think that was his expression, if God is dead, then everything is permitted. And his books explored how people go mad when that's basically the framework that they live under. Yeah.
So how did you start writing from short stories and novels to like writing all these articles for Psychology Today and all these other journals and The Guardian?
Yeah, I guess it's because I'm always motivated not so much by the question of my own artistic style or anything like that. I think, again, to be Taoist about it, I think style has to happen incidentally and accidentally. If you focus on it, it'll vanish. So I tend to focus instead on the big ideas that fuel all the writing. So all of these articles, they're just picking apart the history of ideas that we live with, the big ideas. So a big one that I've written maybe 5 or 6 articles about across numerous platforms is the question of utopia. And utopia, certainly when I was growing up, my parents were utopians, and the 1960s dream was a utopian one. A lot of people in my generation were the kids of that failed utopia. And I really thought utopia had gone away for good, but it returns, of course, with the transhumanists of Silicon Valley and their plan to remake mankind and to colonize the planets and to create a future of superabundance through technology, etc. They're out and out crazy utopians, repeating all the tropes from the 19th century. So I've dug into that on a few essays and found out where that idea came from in history and why it keeps failing again and again, just charting it throughout the Middle Ages, throughout the Enlightenment, how it spawned many different offshoots in the 20th century. I mean, you might not really hear this very often, but both communism and fascism were utopian movements. If you dig into the idea, say, of Germania and New Germania, you'll see, even Hitler was writing about abundance and superabundance in New Germania, whereas the communists were talking about, the new communist man. They were going to, improve the human species. Of course, all this is bundled up with very nasty stuff for both of them, like eugenics and global planning for all of humanity, etc. So it's turned out that little thing I've been exploring for years has come back again and has resurfaced as a big theme, and it's one of the big themes in the book For Emma. I should say For Emma is called For Emma. It's an odd title for a science fiction book or a book with science fiction elements, but it's the name of a computer file that an editor receives. And inside that file, which is not for her, she finds the last video recordings of a man who's known as the San Francisco Bomber. And these are recordings he's made to his daughter. So basically, this is the daughter who died. So basically, the whole format of the book For Emma is a series of video recordings that a man who thinks he's going to die in 30 days by blowing himself up has left to his dead daughter. So hence the title. And Emma, to go back to the utopian thing, she worked in Silicon Valley and was sold on this big transhumanist dream, which is why she agreed to be a lab rat, having a microchip installed in her brain, which eventually killed her.
Is that something you would want to do?
I would certainly not. No, I mean, I have a little phrase like Elon Musk's company is called Neuralink. Yeah, this is the one that implants these microchips, and they've killed about 1,500 animals already doing these experiments. My phrase is, you want Neuralink like you want a hole in the head, because that's literally what it involves, a drill and some glue and some wires and a chip.
Now, I read a little bit of the book, and I was a little bit jarred when it goes back and forth a little bit between the editor and then it goes into the story. Why did you decide to write it that way, like compared to your other books?
Well, I love the idea. So there's a great trope that you get in 19th century books, which is you get the editor. You get this in certainly within Scottish books. It's in a book called Confessions of a Justified Sinner. Also in 19th century Swedish books as well. You'll get the editor has a big say at the start of the book. And usually the reason for that in these books was that they were dealing with transgressive or morally questionable material. So you'd have the editor, who's actually the author, would create this persona of the editor, and the editor would say, oh, well, I found this book sitting in a drawer, and it's of questionable moral nature, but I'm so torn that I feel I must publish it, anyway, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, so I would start off with that, because this is the story of a bomber. I don't want to write, I want to have some distance from that. So it's this found footage. And then I realized I'm going to keep this trope going rather than just ending it at the start. I'm going to have the editor interrupt periodically through the 30 days of the bomber's plan for his suicide homicide, where he's going to kill the CEO. And so she's questioning whether this is real. She's looking at video footage and she's going, yeah, that seems to correspond to the things we know about the bomber. And she's saying, well, here clearly he's drunk and he's rabbiting on some stuff. I don't think the technology exists that he's talking about. And gradually, she's got about 20 interventions in the novel. We realize that the document For Emma that she's got is a dangerous document for anyone to have, and that she's probably being tracked by the fact that she's transcribing the contents, opening it, reading it. So her story starts to develop. She ceases being just someone who's at one state removed, an editor of some material. And she starts to realize that, not without giving too much away, she starts to be threatened for having this material, and she's had to steal this material from her publishing house so she can continue working on it. And there are legal repercussions, and they get bigger and bigger, and eventually you think, oh my God, the people who have handled this material in the past have died, and is she going to die as well? So it became like a whole other strand around the issue of surveillance and secrecy and banned documents. And I ended up really feeling for her as well, because she's somewhat of a naive character who simply gets this material that's way out of the blue. And she thinks, oh, wow, this could make a really controversial novel. But the more she gets involved in it as editor, the more she realizes she might be in danger.
Now, did you do a lot of research about AI and brain chip stuff?
Yeah, I've been doing this for years, though. It's
That's
just,
true enough.
yeah, so it comes out of an obsession rather than it being something that I did just for the purposes of the book. So I discovered the transhumanists and the tech utopians about 6 years ago, as I'm always interested in how utopias go wrong, throughout history. And I've been reading H.G. Wells, who wrote War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man, um, The Time Machine. Yes, 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 yes. He was an amazing author for about 4 years. He wrote these incredible works, and then he decided he was going to become a social planner and a social engineer and commit himself the rest of his life to politics. He wrote many, many, many books on trying to create a perfect utopian society. And I just thought there's something fascinating here about the connection between sci-fi and utopianism, and the way that sci-fi in turn inspires a lot of the technologies that we see today. So this has been building. So I just had to do a deep dive on the transhumanists and the tech utopians. And sure enough, I discovered that they still have some of the problems that the 19th century utopians had. A penchant for dabbling in the DNA of the species is one of their things. The idea of improving the species, again, goes back to the horrors of eugenics. And you get this whenever utopianism resurfaces.
Sorry, my face is disappearing as the sun is moving.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, because I'm on a side. I've been banished to a side room by my husband. So anyhow,
Oh, no
yeah.
worries.
Okay. You know what? Okay, now it's better. Okay. Now, with all your research about utopians,
Mhm.
utopia, do you have any reason why it fails and any solutions to make one work?
No, it's been tried so many times, utopianism, and actually, H.G. Wells, who wrote the Time Machine and War of the Worlds, sorry, in his 30, 40 years in which he was exploring the possibilities of utopia, and he even, in fact, went to interview Stalin. And he said to Stalin, Mr. Stalin, I don't think you're progressive enough. I don't think you're revolutionary enough. You should do more. Stalin, of course, had him on a list of what he called his useful idiots, which were artists and writers who would promote the idea of communism around the world. But H.G. Wells came up with a realization at the end of trying to construct these imaginary utopian societies. He said the problem is they're always static. They're always static in as much as you have a plan and then everyone has to fit the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at Solzhenitsyn as well, who documented the collapse of the utopian project, which was communism, he said a wonderful thing. He said, outside every utopia is a gulag for all the people who didn't fit into the utopia. Yeah. And I think you find that this starts pretty soon after the utopians come to power. They start building prisons and surveillance systems to make sure that everyone is doing what they're told within the utopia, that everyone's buying into the plan. So the problem with all utopianism is that it creates static societies, and they're all always top down.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, they come from one man's plan for everyone, and as societies have got larger, as people talk more about like global utopianism, then that's one man's plan for 9 billion people. So that would not end well. It was bad enough when nation states were doing it. So that's really why utopia always fails. It's brittle, it's inflexible, it can't take any criticism. It cuts all feedback loops off as well. We saw that in the Soviet Union, where people were too afraid, also in communist China as well, where people were too afraid to say, hold on, there's no grain, the machines are not working, because they felt that they would get into trouble with those higher up, the social engineers above them. As a result, the error of having no grade or no machines would go right the way through the economic system. Everyone would suffer. And of course, the utopians then clamp down on information rather than trying to solve the problem. So we've seen this pattern happen again and again. And it's utterly fascinating. I'll probably keep writing about utopianism until the day I drop, as a kind of warning. as to how it actually unfolds.
Okay, now when I was looking at your bio, there was a long list of awards and stuff like that. So
Mm.
for any new writers listening to you, do you have any advice to give to them on writing and I guess, well, awards are like opportunities. I mean, it'll come in like, who knows what the future holds for that.
Well, I mean, I think the one thing is certainly the one, I can't speak for everybody else, but I can probably speak for some of the writers who've inspired me as well. The main thing is to have one burning question, a big one, and for that to influence everything you do, so that it provides the energy, in the machine that is writing. It gets you through all of the fragmentation that can occur with with dealing with agents, with dealing with publishers, with dealing with lack of self-confidence, the collapse of confidence in a project. If you have one burning question, I think for me over the years is the one burning question is, why are we alive, and why
Yes.
shouldn't why shouldn't we just give up and kill ourselves? That's I go and visit my mum in the hospice that she's in, and every time I see her, she says to me, "Bring a gun next time and kill me." I'm like, oh my god. Or
Okay.
there's other
Yeah.
methods as well, but I think it's as Albert Camus, who wrote The Outsider, said, it's the one big question for him as well. He says all philosophy and all novels and all drama come from this one question. For him, it's the question of suicide.
Hmm.
For me, it's a variation on that. It's a question of finding something big to live for. Now that we don't have belief in the religions, that we used to have. Um, are we just gonna cobble together some surrogate thing? Are we gonna distract ourselves with pleasures? Are we gonna try to find belief in someone else? Is that not just passing the buck of your own meaningless life onto another person? So, I mean, I think that's the one thing. It's 9 books now, and I'm still grappling with the question. People say that the question's surfacing more within the books. There was a review I had recently at Monocle Radio, and Georgina Godwin, she said, "This is a book about the meaning of life." I was like, God, you're absolutely right. So for Emma follows, the story of Emma who takes the brain implant. It follows her quest to find out the meaning of life. And that's why she accepts it. And it ends up killing her pursuit. She thinks that by being connected to a super intelligent AI, she'll have all the answers. And she'll be able to get through the depression that comes from having no answers. So that's why she accepts this devil's bargain, if you like, to have the brain chip installed. So yeah, I think that's the advice: is to try to explore your deepest problem, your deepest question again and again and again. Just come at it from all sides, and it can last you 10, 20, 30 years maybe. If I ever find an answer to the meaning of life, I'm sure I'll stop writing. I'll no more need to write anymore. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you if you're working on anything else, but I guess you're always working all the time.
Yeah, and they're often like sides of a Rubik's cube as well. So I'll realize that one piece of a story has no place in the thing I'm working on. I'll put it somewhere else. I'll come back to that later. Um, so so there's for a moment where for Emma had people in society being followed around by drones, like generalized surveillance drones, like science fiction prediction. I was like, nah, that doesn't fit with the story. I'll put it into the next project. And so that then becomes the book that I'm finished and will be the next one, which is called The Children, which is about a surveillance society in which kids have been given extraordinary powers to arrest adults, and everyone's terrified of these.
Oh, I think my child would like that.
Sure. And everyone's followed around by these drones, which all speak with the voice, a maternal mother's voice to them, and tell you what you're doing right and how you could behave better, etc. So, yeah, things migrate from one book to another. Then I go, that's the book for that idea.
When you're going to do a bit of a reading for us, can you give us a little bit of context before you start reading?
Yeah, sure. So this is really the start of the book for Emma. We've had an editor's introduction where she said, I found this strange file that was sent to me by a total stranger. It seems to be video recordings. Maybe they want it published, maybe they not, but it's video recordings of a man who's known as the San Francisco bomber. And there's a whole backstory really about what he was trying to do, who he was trying to kill, etc. And she starts to realize as she's going through the story that maybe what the media has been saying isn't quite true. So she starts transcribing the video recordings that he's made to his daughter Emma. So here we are in the 30 days. In the 30 days that he has planned for the rundown to the assassination attempt through homicide suicide, where he's going to blow himself up and kill the CEO of Big Tech Corporation. 30 days. Hi, Em. It's over a year now since your death, and I'm sorry for having wandered so aimlessly. I'm sorry too about the mess around what would have been your 27th birthday, the day when I heard your voice again, whispering, "Go together." And you might know I ended up in the hospital after that. Damned fool. But I've been totally sober since then. This morning, Em, the meaning of your words became clear. The air is sharp, salt and seaweed smells are blowing up from the bay, and your silly old Pops has come to a final decision. Today is the 1st of September, and in 30 days' time, I'm going to strap an explosive device to my body and take your former boss at Biosys with me when I go. Yes, Nauman. It's a huge relief, Em. You might be even kind of proud of me. I thought I'd lost my energy for good, but it's come surging back. Damn, I can barely sit still. How much dust and sand I've let settle in this old shack. My junior genius, I swear this to you now to make sure I can't back out. I know you tell me, I'm not really here, Pops. I'm just some neurons in the part of your brain that's memory, and you'd probably be right. But I hope you'll keep me company in my last month and speak to me more again. Sorry. I don't know why I'm laughing. Okay, let me tell you how I got to this. Last week, I woke to your words in whisper again. Go together. I turned in bed and called out to you, but of course, you were nowhere to be seen. But the words echoed as I got dressed. Together. Go. I know you didn't believe in souls and all that. You had the PhD in neurophysics after all, so maybe you'd understand better. But how the hell could we go together? I figured it meant I should follow you into death, something you know I've been mulling over for many months anyway. But I find it odd what with our family of atheists. Plus, going by suicide wouldn't have been together with you since you've been gone for 13 months. Sorry, maybe you think I've gone nuts talking back to you. As you know, Granny Annie suggested I write letters to you to help me grieve. She wrote to you for a good month after your funeral, then burned her letters in a ritual in her backyard stove. She said the smoke would reach you in Akasantha, or the field of reeds, or whatever New Age afterlife she believes in this year. I thought the idea pretty tacky at first, but then I stumbled across those video clips you'd left on my laptop. You must have made them when you were 6 or 7. You were singing kiddie songs with that toothless grin, making up rhymes about Andromeda, Aquarius, Cassiopeia, and other constellations you liked the names of. And what kept me so busy 20 years back that I didn't even know you'd recorded these files? After I found them, I spent many nights with them, laughing, weeping. You'll know this anyway if you're still watching over me. So I decided, why not record a few videos of my own for you? Your mum would say I'm deluding myself, trying to keep you alive, but who's left to judge me? Then this morning, this go-together thing all became brilliantly clear. Around 10, I drove over to San Raf Retail Park and picked up my retail prescription of Prozac, codeine, and Tylenol, sleeping pills, beta blockers, and diazepam at Zach's pharmacy. Marcia at the counter made sure to tell me that the sleeping pills and codeine don't go together. And there it was again, like a message from you, through her, for me to take an overdose. But that wasn't it. Then I got some groceries in a discount place, and in the cashier line just before me was this young woman just a few years older than you and similar height him. Her hair was true red, not dyed every color under the sun like yours had been, but her long neck reminded me of you, and she had the same wry elegance in her fingers. For the first time in months, the hollowing out feeling started again. That ache I deadened with pills and vodka and all the rest. This tiny boy, her son, he was maybe 4, and he had freckles and rusty hair, and he was yanking her hand, making a fuss at those magazine shelves by the checkout. Mom, can I have it, please? And he was doing that snatchy thing you used to do. It was some superhero magazine with free plastic toy, and the kid threw a tantrum and bashed my leg. The mother turned to me and said, I'm sorry, and she grabbed her kid, hissing, behave. Maybe I've not spoken to a single soul in almost 4 months, and seeing her face so like yours, her eyes making contact with mine, it froze me and warned me all at once. Her kid started whimpering and she said, You're embarrassing me. Shh, be quiet and stop staring at the poor man. Poor man. And she meant me. That's okay, I said. You always used to say, why, oh, why do you look like a beach bum, Pops? And I guess I did. And why not pity this rough-shaven, middle-aged nobody in old corduroys and worn-out sneakers? My beard's pretty long now, and I'm standing behind her in line like a haunted person, I guess. I just wanted to lean forward and buy the magazine for the kid. Life can be so short, like a sentence barely started, then cut off, before you make any sense of it. I wanted to tell this young mother, sorry for steering, but you're the mirror image of my daughter. There you go.
Well, thank you very much, Lee. And thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you. It's been great.
For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarage.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there is bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.